Hey, cool kids. Welcome back to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm happy that you're joining us this week because I've got an important guest for you. Erica Sell from Harmony Home Medical is joining us to talk to us about all the different options available for specialized medical equipment that we might be able to use in our homes, whether it's for ourselves or for a loved one. This has been such an important conversation that I didn't think we could get it all in. So, this is going to be a part one of a two-part series. So, the next part is going to come up in a few weeks. But this week, we are going to dive in and learn more about Erica, learn more about all the different options that are available to us that maybe Medicare or insurance isn't going to pay for, but we might want to take the extra step and pay out of pocket to have some quality machinery and quality services for our own comfort, as well as to really help improve our situation, whether it's getting over PT, physical therapy, or getting over some kind of a surgery procedure that we might have. So there's all sorts of good information that Erica is going to give us, and I'm excited to share this with you. Before we get started, though, please remember you can go to buymeacoffee.com/coolgrandpa. That's a great way to go and support the show. The other thing you can do too is go to my bookstore, pick out a polo shirt, pick out a ball cap. I know at least in North America, it's starting to get sunny and hot, and a ball cap with the Cool Grandpa logo is a great way to celebrate you being a cool grandpa or to celebrate the cool grandpa in your life. So, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Erica. Hi, Erica. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you on and talk about a topic that sometimes gets overlooked, but is really important for grandparents.
Absolutely, Greg. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'd love for you to give us a little bit of background information about how you got into this kind of a niche, this home medical industry, and sells and support for people that might need something temporarily, or they may need equipment for longer term.
Yeah. Well, I was around it my whole life. I did grow up working in a medical equipment store. My mom had one that was insurance facing, so it was kind of like a warehouse model, which is a lot of the stores even to today are the same. And I did not want to go into that business. I went to college to be a financial advisor and do some Latin American business at a UCSD. And 6 months after I graduated, my mom had a medical emergency and a financial emergency in her business, and I went home and I was able to do the grown up part of the business. I was with her on home assessments and measuring ceilings. In high school, I just delivered and cleaned wheelchairs, and I didn't want anything to do with that. I never got to see the inner workings. And so I asked her, like, why don't you show this to people? Why don't you show seniors these roll-in showers and these ceiling lifts and these specialized products that we were doing for Regional Center, which is a third-party payer for kids? And she said, well, because Medicare doesn't cover these items. They don't cover these nicer scooters. They don't cover a walk-in tub, so no one will buy it. And I said, I think you might be wrong. Like, I think there's a space for this. People should know. They should know. And so she helped me get a booth at the Del Mar Fair in San Diego, and I just tested cash pay, nicer medical supply, and it was a hit. People needed it. They didn't know about it. Traditionally, a lot of the sales had been done in the home in kind of a high pressure setting. And so then I set out to change that and did retail with it. And a few years later, my mom did retail too in her store. And the rest is history. And it's more needed than ever because since then, since I began, Medicare just keeps making cuts to our medical equipment benefits until people are needing to have options and go out of pocket more and more. And that's what we do.
Oh, sure. And I imagine too, as you said, there's probably more options out there than folks realize because it sounded like so many people just go, "Hey, here's exactly what will be covered, and I'm
Yeah,
not gonna show you kind of the nicer options, the cushions, the whatever else,"
exactly. It's so true. That was the model before. There's a few stores like Harmony that do that. I had a gentleman today drive all the way down from Huntington to our store in San Diego because he couldn't find a place that had aesthetically pleasing hospital beds. He wanted to see what high-low adjustable beds looked like. We put 3 different models on our floor, and he's like, "I couldn't find it anywhere." So he made the hour and a half drive to come see us in Vista.
Oh, wow. And are those able to be the ones that aren't necessarily covered by Medicaid or insurance, does insurance cover at least some of those?
Well, if someone qualifies for a bed, they can do a self-claim form where they get reimbursed for the HCPCS code. So for a bed, it'd be EO260, and they would pay the client back directly what Medicare covers. So that is definitely a possibility. And we have the forms for that and the receipts for it. The caveat is that they still need to qualify for it. So Medicare
Okay.
criteria can be quite stringent, especially around beds. So they have to be able to show the justification that they can't change position independently in bed and that pillows have been tried.
Okay. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. I know that many grandparents want to stay in their homes as long as possible. What are some of the most common misconceptions families have about aging in place, and how do you gently reframe those misconceptions?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people just think I'm not going to need this or this won't happen to me, and they don't address the potential much earlier. They come into it kind of in crisis mode. I think that if people would just consider the facts that 80% of us use a wheelchair at some point in our life, during our aging decline, that if they would consider that and look at their home with those eyes from the time their children leave the house, or if they never had children, from about age 50 on, because we're generally making remodel changes to our home every 7 to 10 years. So when you make those changes, do it through the lens of accessibility and universal design, and it's really not hard when you do it that way. Wider doorways, zero threshold showers. None of these things cost a lot more when you're already doing projects. It starts to get overwhelming and it costs a lot when people need everything all at once and they haven't thought about it and they don't know what to do. So the biggest advice would be to think about it way earlier than what you might think is no, normal or necessary, and try to integrate things in our home that might be helpful as we age. And that's simple things like lighting and color palette for our flooring. Um, so yeah, working with an expert who can kind of give you those pointers and help you understand what accessibility looks like.
Okay, that makes sense. What are, let's say, the top 2 or 3 things that people come to your store to look into and check out?
I would say bathrooms and beds. So beds is one of our biggest categories because of the stringent guidelines from Medicare. People need them when Medicare doesn't cover them. So we sell and rent a lot of beds. And then people also want that bed that looks nicer. So we sell a hospital bed that can help you transfer. It can do forward and backward sloping, which helps swelling. And it looks just like a bed you see at the furniture store. So that's a product you can put in your home even before you need it. Like I have them in my spaces just because they look great and they do all the things. It's nice to be able to automatically adjust. So people looking at that to make their home not feel hospitally, but still have the ability to sleep and transfer safely. And then in the bathroom's the number one place that falls happen. So when a fall happens at home, 80% of the time it's in the bathroom. And a lot of people could benefit from a full bathroom remodel when they start to, need mobility changes and need mobility support. However, we saw a lot of products that can kind of work as a Band-Aid to that, from simple things like a transfer bench that you sit on and slide into the shower. That's a simple version, and then we sell a version that actually you transfer in your bedroom, and you roll that chair in, and it clicks onto a track that slides over your tub. So it's kinda like creating a roll-in shower without having to do one, construction-wise, and that can make somebody, no matter their mobility level, be able to have a safe transfer from bedroom to bath. So we have a whole array from pretty low tech to high tech bathroom solutions that you can do before construction. And there's a lot of people who need that.
So it sounds like it would be a great idea for people to not only consider if you're getting rid of stairs, let's say, but also starting to look at, what does the bathroom look like? What does the kitchen look like? Your entrances, like you said, expanding those so that you might be able to move devices in and out through rooms easily.
Yeah.
Um,
People will want to look at their entry and exits of their home, the places they transfer the most, like bedroom, favorite chair, kitchen table, and then their bathroom accessibility. And of course, one floor living is the best, is the best way to set it up. Sometimes people convert a dining into a downstairs bedroom or do a modification with an ensuite, a non-ensuite bathroom downstairs, but make it one. We also sell and rent portable showers, roll-in showers that can kind of bridge that gap. Um, and then stair lifts and elevators. So all these things, they take a little bit of budget, and people have to consider that. Like, is it better and more cost effective to just make the changes in my two-story home? Or is it better to sell my home and, get that ranch home and make that move? And there's a lot of considerations into that between realtor commissions and maybe renovations. So it's super unique, but there's solutions on both side of that coin, whichever way they go.
Now, let's take the scenario of a couple, let's say, that they're downsizing, they're whatever, they're at the age, they're going through, maybe they're doing new construction, maybe they're doing a reno on a house that they're buying. Would they typically sit down with you and the architect to talk about some of these things? Because I know architects are up to date with a bunch of codes and a bunch of other things, but aesthetically pleasing and what's easy sounds like that's in your ballpark.
Yeah. So they absolutely should sit with someone. There's more and more people in our field with something called a CAP certification, Certified Aging in Place Specialist. And you could work with them. There's designers that are starting to get it, interior designers who can then help you beyond just the layout, which is kind of what we do and where our help ends, and then get into the aesthetics, like the colors and some of the products. We show and carry like all the more attractive grab bars and fixtures, but, knowing the latest in tile colors and toilets available, things like that, we don't go as far as that, but I have people in my network, interior designers, um, who have the credentials that do. So there's different ways to do it depending on how much help you want with design through that process. But I would absolutely recommend it because there's a lot of architects and a lot of build companies that don't have any experience around accessible design.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was almost like this has got to be a little bit new to them. I think everybody's like, if a client said, "Hey, I need a walk-in shower or roll-in," um, okay, they know how to do that, but not necessarily maybe how to make the house flow properly if somebody is in a wheelchair or has mobility issues.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that's probably where you guys come in.
Yeah, absolutely. How much turning radius they need in the bathroom and where to find that. And to consider what people need now and then forever. And that's the way I look at a home when we're looking at when we're doing a home assessment for equipment or modifications. Someone may come to us and say they have Parkinson's and they're ambulatory, but they have a freeze sometimes. I will set their home up with bars and rails that accommodate and meet that need now, but also look at pathways, doorways, transfer points for use with a wheelchair. And a lot of times the two will coincide and it could be the same recommendation, but sometimes it's not the same recommendation and what you would do with a walker versus a wheelchair. And so I like to make people's homes and expectations meet their need forever and try to have them be open to having that little more, it's generally open spaces, but a little more robust plan that accommodates their current state and any future state.
Oh, that makes sense. I want to pivot a little bit, and I know within the website and some of the materials I've looked over, you said you wanted to put choices back in the hands of the end user rather than the insurance companies. Can you tell me a story where a family or an older adult really benefited from that philosophy in working with you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this was our ethos and my like desire from the beginning, even when insurance was more involved. Um, because even then, so Medicare, is a little quick history. Medicare, from when I started in 2008 to today, has cut reimbursements 42% over that time, where product cost has probably gone up 50%. So they've really made it so what's covered is the lowest cost item inside of each category. And so inside the category of, say, patient lifts, there's a plethora of different types of lifts that can do different things. And the nicer ones, the easier ones cost more. And so, of course, they're not covered. And one of my favorite stories, and it happened multiple times, but I remember a senior couple that was caring for each other, and they're given a Hoyer lift on insurance, and she can't use it at all. She's transferring her husband and the whole rolling him into the sling and then pushing the lift around, and she's in her late 80s, and it was, gonna be he needs to go to a facility or she needs to get care on an ongoing basis, even on just a 4 hours a day can get really expensive in a hurry, especially, I mean, not to mention 12 hours of care or more. So, I introduced them to the sit-to-stand lift, and the sit-to-stand lift is a lift that instead of putting them in a sling where you have to kinda fly hammocked, you stay on your feet and you go from a sitting to a standing position with a electric with a button. So push of a button, and then you train them to just turn their lift 90 degrees. So you set the bed and the chair kitty corner to each other. All you need to do is pivot that lift and put the person down, and they land in a 90 degrees. Like when you're in a sling, you kind of start like this, and you need to get them to a chair like this. And so many times people's bottom is hanging way out at the end of the chair, and then they're yanking their shoulders and getting them back. This lift kind of eliminates all of that, and so it enabled these 2 to care for each other, for her to do his transfers and him to be able to land safely, easily, no complicated sling to put on. It's just a little strap behind the back and shoulder, like under the armpits and shoulders, and boom, it was totally possible and done. And that was the tool they needed to be able to stay at home. So that's an example, and that product nobody knows. Even doctors and care managers oftentimes don't know what a sit-to-stand patient lift is.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because I bet there's a lot of technologies out there that most of these physicians and some of the caregivers, because they might only see the insurance provided
Yeah.
items, have no idea that there's some other things out there.
Today I had a doctor text me what I wanted on the order for this client they're sending, even though it's a cash pay referral, they want to set it up so they can do the reimbursement thing I talked about. And he
Right.
goes, well, should I write it for semi-electric or full electric? I don't really know what the difference is. And that's from a doctor writing,
Right.
so the difference is that semi-electric, you have to crank the height of the bed up and down, hand crank it, and
Mhm.
that's what's covered by insurance. Full electric, you push a button and it goes up and down, and we only sell and rent full electric. Uh, and so anyways, I told him about it, but that's a perfect example. They don't know. They're very much like our medical system. They're very in their lane. Our healthcare system is you specialize in the heart, you specialize in cancer, and it misses the holistic view sometimes in some of the education in other fields like equipment or nutrition.
Well, and I imagine too that the equipment manufacturers don't have the same budget as the pharma sales reps.
That's why
And
our industry got cut in the first place. Yeah, we don't have the good lobbyists.
right, right. But one of the things that is interesting as the population with the silent generation and the baby boomers and now Gen X is I think this aging population, the desire for mobility, the desire to keep doing things is pushing a lot of changes in the industry.
Yeah.
What are some changes and trends that you're seeing going on in the industry right now?
That is so true, and it's so exciting because there was a very, very long like, the first decade of business where there was almost no innovation. It was very slow to see a lot of changes because there wasn't a demographic, the boomers, that were going to pay for all this R&D, to have a demand high enough to make companies be interested in developing new products. And now that's flipped and the boomers are going to be one of the largest or our largest purchasing demographic and they're aging and they're going to need stuff to support themselves in aging. And like you said, lifestyle is something they want to go do things, continue doing the stuff they love to do. And so in the last 5 years, we've seen the lightest weight power chair go from 99 pounds. It was a 99-pound chair, you disassemble it in 4 pieces, and that was the crème de la crème for the whole entire first decade and a half that I was in decade, 'cause it's 17 years now. Yeah, and now the last 5 years, it went down, we had a 65, then we had a 45. We are down now to a 26-pound power chair. A carbon fiber chair people can put in their trunk. Most people can do it on their own, and it's just crazy. That's lighter than the standard wheelchair that Medicare pays for. So that's the kind of stuff that is coming out. And then of course these pretty beds, the pretty adjustable beds, they always existed for the head and the foot at furniture stores. But the feature that seniors really need is that up and down. And those weren't around in a very pretty format for too long. There was 2 vendors that did it all right, got rid of the metal, but now they have, like, headboard and fabric choices and sideboards and all sorts of things to make them look real nice, and that's all new.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible, and, when you're talking about how that weight kept going down and then it's carbon fiber, being kind of an IT guy, my head goes to 3D printing, right? Like,
Mhm.
how much can we drive costs down but quality up if, for example, your stores had a 3D printer that could print out a
Yeah,
chair for
stuff right
somebody?
there. I know. I don't know if it would ever go there because of the FDA and assembly criteria, but I did ride my first 3D printed scooter at Medtrade last week. So they
Okay.
had prototyped it and like all the components on it were 3D printed and they were seeing if they would take it to mold, and make it a finalized version.
Well, and I also go to that point where, like, you see it with running shoes and orthopedics and stuff like that, where you can take a mold or a scan of somebody's foot or, their backside, let's say, and then create the chair seat and cushioning
Yes.
that's right for them.
That's coming, and it has to come in an easier way because we do that now, like, as an ATP, that's a complex rehab, specker outer a complex chair designer, I guess you could call it. That's my credential, and, we put people in these really complicated air-filled, bags, and it sucks the air out, and you kinda mold it around them, and it's an expensive system that you have to call the manufacturer to bring out. And I could see that getting a lot easier and even more accurate with that kind of product and that kind of technology applied to medical equipment. And making the cost for the final product come down too, because the
Right.
final product costs on those molds are really expensive, like over $1,000 per backrest and seat cushion.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that gets tough to compete with when somebody just wants to put a sofa cushion behind somebody's back.
Yeah. It does, and if we I kinda merge the 2 fields, the ATP, the complex rehab, and the retail,
Mhm.
and we'll do, like, a off-the-shelf chair with an aftermarket back, but a fairly basic one, and then you fill it with foam wedges and lumbar roll, and, you try to make it as comfortable and fitted to that person as possible, but with some of the kyphosis, which is, like, the curling over of the back, and the big curve in the
Oh,
neck, it can get kind of hard to really accommodate for that, and it would be amazing to have some sort of simple, cost-effective custom mold solution.
that'd be fantastic, and Erica, I know I'm running out of time and I want to have you back on. But before we wrap up this, let's say part one, can you tell everybody about your stores, where you're located, but also if people in Bangor, Maine want to get a hold of you and consult with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so the best place to start is harmonyhomemedical.com. So our website has a ton of information and you can see a pretty good swath of what we carry and sell. Not everything is on our site, but a good chunk of products, the most popular. And then for a little more education or tutorials, our YouTube channel has some good videos like how to use a patient lift, the differences between hospital beds, things like that. And then they can always call and talk to someone on our team to get advice about specific products that can work. I know we sell drop ship and white glove where it's delivered and set up across the nation. So they can order with us online, but it depends on the product because I've had people call for specific things that I really believe are better with a local provider and some measurement and more custom solutions. And so I've Googled with people right on the phone, like, let's find the closest provider to you. And then I can help them determine a little bit if it's more of a retailer or a custom provider versus that warehouse model that we talked about. There's some national chains that might come up that I can help people avoid that don't do anything with measuring or customization. But so yeah, so we're a wealth of knowledge and a resource no matter where you live, no matter where you're at. And I would definitely recommend to get a little educated on the product offerings and what's out there before, you make a decision, but then to work with a company that is a professional and not just try to go about it on Amazon or something on your own. I can't tell you how many times I have calls, like almost daily. Will we buy this back? Will we buy that? Because they bought something and it doesn't work. And nobody wants to pack up a hospital bed or a power chair, even a walker. They don't want to pack it back up and send it back. So I would say work with a professional in your area or reach out to us and work with us, and we're happy to help.
Oh, that's awesome. And we'll be sure to put links into the show notes for all of that so people can easily find you and get connected with you. But Erica, I really have appreciated your time, and this has been a great first step into really understanding the services and the value that you provide for people to age it in home.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. It was my pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking with Erica. In case you might have missed it, this is going to be part one of a two-part series. So keep an eye out in your podcast feed. In the next couple of weeks, you should be seeing part two being released. And that one, we're going to dive even deeper into some of the stories, some of the wins, and some of the struggles that people have when they're bringing home medical equipment to help the aging in place. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope it had as much meaningful information to you and made you a better prepared person if you're finding yourself needing home medical equipment for yourself or for a loved one. So I want to just say thank you again for listening to the Cool Grandpa podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And until next time, remember to stay cool.